So for this problem, we're looking at Li-Fraumeni syndrome. This is a syndrome where the individual has a mutation in a single gene of the p53 gene. p53, you may remember, is a tumor suppressor gene that is involved in a wide variety of cancers. In fact, it's mutated in about 50% of all cancers. So in this problem, we're saying that someone's parents both had germline mutations in one of the copies of this gene, and then I ask you what is the probability that this individual's cells will promote cancer. So A says 100% since they will inherit one copy from each parent, and you need two non-functional copies to promote cancer. B says 50% since each parent has a 50% chance of giving the individual a non-functional tumor suppressor gene, and only one copy must be inherited to promote cancer. C says 75 since each parent has a 50% of giving the individual the non-functional copy, and you need just one non-functional copy to promote cancer. D says 25% since each parent has a 50% chance of giving the individual the non-functional copy, and you need both non-functional copies to promote cancer. And E, 75% since each parent has a 50% chance of giving the individual the non-functional copy, and you will need both copies to promote cancer. So let's look at how you would go about solving this problem. So first of all, we say that someone's parents have a germline mutation in one of the copies. So we know that all the parents are heterozygous. I'm going to use the letter A to represent this. So only one of the parents, or one of the genes each parent has. So if you draw out the Punnett square for this, you would have capital A, lowercase a for 1. And then on this side, we'd also have that. So now we have 1 getting the uppercase, and let's do this again. They're getting 2 of the uppercases, 2 heterozygous individuals. So these guys would be carriers, and then 2 people with the recessive gene. The other thing to remember here is that with the tumor suppressor genes, they're mutated to non-functional, so the dominant form is going to be the form that is working normally and not causing problems. It's the mutant form that is the recessive version. So to get the phenotype that would promote cancer in the cells, you would need the lowercase. And so if we look at that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 options, and 1 that has that. Since there's only one that has 25%, each parent has 50% chance, and you need both non-functional copies. The correct answer for this question would be D. Alright, with this problem, we are looking at a pedigree, and we're looking at some dragon genetics. So this should be, you should be able to recall some of this from lab. So here we're looking at dragons that have horns, and that's indicated by the blue shade. So all of these that have horns, that are blue, have horns, meaning that these individuals are the ones that do not. So the first question is, no dragons with horns are born from 2 parents without horns, and whenever a male with horns mates with a female without horns, all the female offspring have horns, and all the male offspring are hornless. So what do these observations tell you about the trait? Well, this first observation, that no dragon with horns are born from two parents without horns, means that if you have parents without horns, you will never get a dragon with horns, suggesting that the trait of having horns is dominant. So the two parents without horns would have the homozygous recessive phenotype. The second part suggests that because a male mates with a female without horns, all the female offspring will have horns. So this is dominant. So we know that the female are either homozygous dominant or heterozygous, and all the male offspring are hornless. This would indicate that that this is sex-linked. So that tells you that this is a sex-linked trait, and that it is a dominant sex-linked trait. So here we have the three reds. These people lack horns. These are going to be the ones that are homozygous recessive. So this question is asking what are the genotypes of A, B, C, D, E, and F. So let's see if we can't work this out. So because it's carried on the X chromosome, I will indicate this using X's. Let's zoom in here briefly on this. So we have parents that give rise to a female without horns. So if it's a female without horns, that means that they have to have two copies of the recessive gene. If we want to look, this indicates that they're getting the recessive gene, or the dominant gene, from their mother, and they're getting a Y from their father. And then this one would indicate that they are heterozygous. That's for both of those right here. So if we move up then to these right here, Dad has to be hemizygous because he only has one X chromosome, and he has to have the recessive, so he doesn't have horns. His brother next to him would be the same. This brother, however, would have to have the dominant trait and the Y. This individual here, let's work on B first. So B, we know that this individual has to have a dominant trait, and we also know that because she gave birth to individuals with the recessive trait, she has to be a carrier of that. So we know that she has to have that. If we go there up at top here, we would have to assume that Dad is the dominant trait, so capital H with the X, and then he's going to have a Y. Mom has to be heterozygous in order to give that trait to her daughter. So in order for the daughter to be a carrier, she has to donate that. We can actually figure out what this brother is then, because he'll have the dominant trait and the Y chromosome. F, though, it becomes a little bit more tricky. So we know that they have to have one dominant trait, because she would get that from her father. The question then is which one she would get from her mother. So is she going to be like this sibling and heterozygous, or is she going to be homozygous and have both the dominant traits? because this individual did not have any daughters, we actually cannot tell based on this information. So the second allele here is uncertain. Alright, so in this this activity, you are, again, a geneticist, like you were in class, and you have a true breeding strain of brown mice. So that's what these guys indicate here. The original brown and brown would look like that. Now from this, you one day have mice that are yellow being born. So these are the agouti mice. They are born in this due to a random mutation, and you set out to find the nature of this. So these came from the true breeding strain of brown mice, but they have yellow coats for some reason, and you want to figure out why. So you cross an agouti mouse with another agouti mouse, and you get this ratio offspring here. So you have two agouti mice born, and a third mouse would be the brown. So if you take this F1 brown then and mate it with an agouti mouse, you would get half the offspring being brown and half the offspring being yellow. And then if you take any brown mouse and mate it with another brown mouse, you would get more brown mice. So if you pause the video, you can work on this for a bit, see if you can't come to a conclusion. I'll give you the answer here. So the key to doing this is recognizing that the agouti color must be dominant to the brown, because whenever the brown mice mate, they're only going to have brown mice regardless of where they came from. So these mice, if you bred them with each other, would give brown mice. If you bred them with this mouse, they would give brown mice, and in this one they would give brown mice. So you're always getting brown when you breed with brown. The yellow then must be dominant. So this indicates that this yellow is heterozygous, and it came from these individuals over here. So if this is heterozygous, half the offspring end up getting two of the small alleles and two of the dominant alleles. So if you write that out, so you have the agouti mice, and you mate it with the brown mice. Half of them end up being heterozygous and agouti, and half of them end up being brown. So then the weird thing is the results that you get here. So I told you that these always came from here. So this indicates that regardless of what you pick, these individuals are going to be heterozygous. So if you can recognize that, then you may start wondering why there is a 2-to-1 ratio. This is something that we haven't seen before. So if we draw out the Punnett square for this, so these represent the agouti parents. You get A, 2 heterozygous, and 1 recessive. So the recessive represents the brown mice. The heterozygous represent these mice here, and the homozygous, that right there, is actually lethal. So this indicates that you need 1 functional copy of this gene to actually give this a to give this mouse a chance to live. If you only get half of it, it gives a phenotype that's different than normal. And if you get the recessive traits, then you're okay because it's functioning in a way that it needs to. So that's how this inheritance is. It's probably more challenging than anything you will see on a test, but it makes you think. It's good exercise. If you understand this, you're well on your way to doing well.